How are you guys doing? Today is Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Klay Thompson. The elite starting shooting guard for the Golden State Warriors turns 32 today, and my intention with this episode is, of course, to focus on Klay Thompson's impact on the game of basketball currently on a micro level, seeing what he does game in and game out to consistently show that he's one of the best players and one of the most demanding sports on earth. And I'm also going to focus on his impact on a macro level and see how he's impacted the history of a game that is being recorded where only one team can be the champion. He is a 3-time champion, a 5-time NBA All-Star. He's made the All-NBA third team twice, and he's even made the All-NBA second team once, proving that he's one of the best players on both sides of the basketball. And he's even won a gold medal in the Olympics, winning for his home, and he was able to win for the Golden State Warriors as well. To describe his profile right before I get into his background, he stands at about 6'6" and 220 pounds. Offensively, he's a very intelligent player and one of the best catch and shoot 3-point shooters of all time. And not to mention that he is one of the best one-on-one on-ball defenders as well, as he has had to defend a lot of great players down the stretches for the Warriors in a lot of playoff games. Not to mention that his shooting has also saved the Warriors in a lot of playoff series as well. Even though he's missed the last 2 seasons with a serious ACL injury that he suffered in the 2019 finals, I still think that now that he's returned, once he gets back into shape, he is still one of the most elite basketball players on earth. So just to get into his background, he's originally from Los Angeles, as his dad, Michael Thompson, was a Los Angeles Laker that won championships in the 80s with Magic Johnson in the Showtime Lakers. Klay Thompson would go on to play high school ball in Los Angeles before getting recruited to play college basketball at Washington State. He would go on to play there from 2008 to 2011, as he would go on to play 3 seasons for the Washington State Cougars, and he would leave after 3 years. His very first season with the team, of course, would be his freshman season, and in 2008-2009, that would, of course, be his age 18 season with a Washington State team that would finish with a 17-16 record under Tony Bennett. And yes, that is the Tony Bennett that would go on to coach at Virginia immediately after coaching at Washington State. That was Klay Thompson's very first coach. So following Tony Bennett's last season in Tony Bennett's final season at Washington State, Klay Thompson would average about 33 minutes, as he would go on to average 12 and a half games, 4 rebounds and 2 assists, just under a steal and just over half a block per game, all while shooting 42% from the field, 41% from 3, and 90% from the foul line. So doing all this while averaging 12 points for a Washington State team that was middle of the road was pretty solid. But of course, he would go back and return to Washington State. And in his sophomore season, he would, of course, flip a switch. In his age 19 season in 2009-2010 for Washington State, he would start 30 of the 31 games he played for a Washington State team that will go on to finish with a 16-15 record in their very first season with Ken Bone as the head coach. So they were about middle of the pack that year. In his sophomore season, Klay Thompson would be named to the first team All-Pac-10 for the very first time. He would see himself average about 2 more minutes per game. He was averaging 35 minutes a game. He was averaging 19.6 points while shooting 41% from the field, 36% from 3, and 80% from the foul line. All of this while taking 4 more shots a game. He took 1.5 more threes a game. So he was taking a lot more shots, as the load was definitely on him. Alongside his 19.5 points, he averaged 5 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.4 steals, and 0.7 blocks, as those would be improvements all across the board from his freshman season. After his sophomore season, he still felt as though he needed another year at Washington State to prove that he was NBA ready. His third and final season with Washington State would be his age 20 season. This season would take place in 2010-2011. In that season, in Ken Bone's second season with Washington State, they would finish with a 22-13 record with 6 more wins than the previous season. Klay Thompson would go on to average 21.6 points alongside 5 rebounds and 3.7 assists. He did all this while shooting 43% from the field, which was a career high, while taking 16 shots a game. He would go on to shoot almost 40% from 3 while taking 7 threes a game and making almost 3 3-pointers a game. He would go on to shoot 83% from the line while shooting almost as many free throws as he shot his sophomore year. He would do all this while kind of improving his numbers all across the board compared to his sophomore season. And just even seeing him improving all across the board, even seeing his points improve from 19.6 to 21.6, would see him be named to the first team All-Pac-10 for the second year in a row in 2011. Following his 3-year stint at Washington State, Klay Thompson would be selected with the 11th overall pick in the 2011 NBA draft by the Golden State Warriors. Looking at other players that were selected in that round, Kyrie Irving, the elite starting point guard for the Brooklyn Nets, was selected by the Cavaliers out of Duke with the number 1 overall pick. Kawhi Leonard was taken with the 15th overall pick by the Indiana Pacers and traded to the Spurs out of San Diego State. And Jimmy Butler, the elite starting small forward for the Heat, was the 30th overall pick in the 2011 NBA draft by the Chicago Bulls out of Marquette after his senior year, just to get a sense of who Klay Thompson came up in his draft with. And ever since, Klay Thompson has been a member of the Golden State Warriors, as he has been a member of the team for this will be his 11th season playing with this team. His very first season, his rookie year, would be his age 21 season with the team in 2011-2012. In his rookie season, he would start 29 of the 66 games he played for a Golden State Warriors team that finished with a 23-43 record. They had won 13 less games in their previous year, and this was immediately after the year in which Steph Curry won the Sportsmanship Award. Klay Thompson would average about 25 and a half minutes in his first season in the league. He would average about 12 and a half points, 2.4 rebounds, 2 assists, 0.7 steals, and 0.3 blocks. He averages 12.5 points while shooting 44% from the field, 41% from 3, and he shot 86% from the foul line. So he was shooting pretty good percentages. He just wasn't getting a lot of shots off. But he still would play every single game this year, as this would be a shortened year. After the Warriors would miss the playoffs, Klay Thompson would, of course, come back for his second year with the Golden State Warriors. And after his first year, every year he's played with the Golden State Warriors, they've made the playoffs. His second year with the Golden State Warriors would be his age 22 season in 2012-2013. In his very first year as a full-time starter, he would start all 82 of the games he played for the only time he's done so in a season where the Warriors would finish with a 47-35 record. They would win 24 more games than they had the previous year, more than doubling their previous win total. They would go on to finish with the 6th best record in the West, as they would clinch the playoffs for the first time since 2007, when Monte Ellis won the Most Improved Player. And in his season as a starter for the first time, he would average about 36 minutes per game. In his second season, that would be the most minutes he's averaged per game and the most games he's played in a season. He would go on to average 16.6 points per game, alongside 3.7 rebounds, 2.2 assists, 1 steal, and 0.5 blocks, as he saw an improvement all across the board. He would shoot 42% from the field, as he took 4 more shots a game. He saw his field goal percentage drop about 20 points. He would shoot 40% from 3. This will be the second year in a row he shot 40%, and he shot 84% from the foul line, as the Warriors would find their way into the playoffs. Once they made it in, they would end up beating the Nuggets in the first round in 6 games before losing in the conference semifinals to the San Antonio Spurs. Following that year, of course, Klay Thompson would return for his 3rd full season with the Golden State Warriors. In his 2nd full season as a starter in his age 23 season in 2013-14. He will go on to start all 81 of the games he played for a Golden State Warriors team that would finish with a 51-31 record. They had the 6th best record in the West for the 2nd straight year, as they had won 4 more games than the prior year. In this season, Klay Thompson would average about 35 points, the same as before. But all while taking 1 more shot per game, you would see himself averaging 2 more points. His points per game went up from 16.6 to 18.4 points per game. He saw his rebounds dip from about 3.7 to 3.1, as his assists stayed at about 2.2. His steals stayed at about 1, as his blocks stayed at half a block. His field goal percentage would jump up from 42 to 44, as he would go on to shoot 42% from 3, and he shot 75% from the foul line. His 3rd year in the league would be the only year in which he didn't shoot at least 80% from the foul line out of his 8 years in which out of his 9 years in which they've recorded him actually taking and making free throws in the league. And then once this season was over, the Golden State Warriors would end up losing in the very first round to the Clippers. But of course, by that time, they had made the playoffs a couple times and had proven that they were at least a team not to be bothered. Following that 2014 season, he will go on to compete with the U.S. team in the FIBA World Cup in 2014 in Spain. They would go on and beat Serbia in the finals to, of course, win this game, as this would be the very first gold medal that they would run away with. And then following this 2014 FIBA World Cup win, Klay Thompson would return to the Golden State Warriors for his 4th season with the team, and this would be his very first season as an All-Star. In his 3rd season as a starter, he would start all 77 of the games he played in 2014-15 for a Golden State Warriors team that would finish with the best record in the Western Conference. They had won 16 more games in the previous season, as Stephen Curry had won his very first MVP, and Bob Myers was named the Executive of the Year. This would be the very first time that the Golden State Warriors would have the best record in the West since 1976. So, of course, this is a very historic year for the franchise. In his very first playoff season, Klay Thompson would see himself drop down from averaging 35.5 points to averaging 35.5 minutes per game to averaging 32 minutes per game. He would see his points per game jump up from 18.4 to 21.7, averaging 3 more points per game, as he would see his rebounds stay at about 3.2. His assists jump from 2.2 to 2.9. His assists jump up a bit to a 1.1, and his blocks would jump up to 0.8. His 1.1 steals and 0.8 blocks are the most steals and blocks he would ever have in a season. Not to mention that in his first All-Star game, in his very first All-Star season, his 2.9 assists are the most assists that he's ever recorded in a full season, at least to date. And not to mention that in that season, the Golden State, in addition to helping the Golden State Warriors make the playoffs, and being named an All-Star, Klay Thompson would also be named to the All-NBA 3rd team for the very first time in his NBA career. And once the Warriors would make the playoffs, they would end up sweeping the Pelicans in the first round. They beat the Grizzlies in the second round in 6 games. In the conference finals, they would end up beating the Houston Rockets, where they were led by James Harden. And then they ended up beating the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals in 6. This was the year in which Kevin Love got his arm ripped out of his socket before going into the series, and when Kyrie Irving would end up twisting his ankle in the very first game. The Warriors were simply overwhelming compared to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Klay Thompson was a very big part in the Warriors winning that title, as even looking at how he fared in the playoff series in his very first finals, he would go on to average 15 or 16 points per game, 4 rebounds as well, as he went on to shoot 40% from the field, 30% from three, and he made 92% of his free throws. And following his after his fourth season in the league, he would be named an NBA champion for the very first time in his NBA career. Very tough for any player to do that, and he did so in the very first year that he was an All-Star. So following his very first title, he would come back to return to the Golden State Warriors for his fifth season with the team. In his fourth season as the full-time starter, in his age 25 season, he would start all 80 of the games he played in a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish with a 73-9 record. They had set an NBA record for regular season wins. This would be the first season in which an NBA player was named a unanimous MVP, as Stephen Curry was named the MVP. Steve Kerr was named the Coach of the Year this year, the only time Steve Kerr was named the Coach of the Year. In this season, in which they would win 6 more games than the previous season, the year before they got Kevin Durant. Klay Thompson would average about 3 more minutes in the previous year. He would average 22.1 points per game. He would go on to average 3.8 rebounds, which is tied for the most he's ever averaged in a season. He averaged 2.1 assists, which is just almost a full assist lower than what he did the previous year. He averaged 0.8 steals and 0.6 blocks. And alongside his 22 points per game, he would do all this while shooting 47% from the field. He shot 42% from three, making it the 5th consecutive year in his first 5 years in which he shot 40% from three. He would also go on to shoot 87% from the foul line, making it the 4th time in his first 4 years he shot at least 80% from the foul line. And at the conclusion of the 2015-16 season, in addition to being named an All-Star for the 2nd year in a row, Klay Thompson would also be named the NBA three-point contest champion for the only time in his career. He would be named to the All-NBA third team to the 2nd time in his career. He has not been named to an All-NBA team since 2016. But once the Golden State Warriors would make it into the playoffs, and he would establish himself as a top 15 player in the NBA, the Warriors would beat the Rockets in the first round in 5. They would beat the Trailblazers in the conference semifinals in 5 games as well. They would end up beating the Oklahoma City Thunder in 7 games, as Klay Thompson would end up having to put together some unreal performances to help the Warriors make it out of this series. As against the Thunder, he would have to average 24.7 points per game that series. And then once the Warriors made it to the finals against the Cleveland Cavaliers, they were up 3-1 at one point in a situation in which no team in NBA Finals history had blown a 3-1 finals lead. This would be the year in which Cleveland, and led by LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, would mount one of the craziest NBA comebacks in history. Unfortunately for Klay Thompson, he was on the losing end of that, and in Klay Thompson's second NBA Finals appearance, he would lose in 7 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Many people know how that summer went. After the Cavaliers won that finals, the Golden State Warriors would add Kevin Durant to their ranks. And not to mention, in 2016, Klay Thompson would compete with the Olympic team in Rio de Janeiro, where they would get the gold medal. Serbia would get the silver, and of course, Spain would get the bronze. He has not competed with the Olympic team, at least for 2020. He has not competed since 2016 with the United States men's basketball team. But following his season, or I guess following his second trip to the title, and following his 5th season with the Warriors, he would return for season 6. In his age 26 season with the Golden State Warriors in 2016-17, he would start all 78 of the games he played in a season in which the Golden State Warriors would finish with a 67-15 season. They would finish with the same record they had the first time they had won the Western Conference. This is the 3rd year in a row they had the best record in the conference, and this is the first time they did so with Kevin Durant being their best player. This would be the year in which Draymond Green would win the Defensive Player of the Year, and Bob Myers won his 2nd Executive of the Year. Bob Myers has not won Executive of the Year since 2016-17. In Thompson's first season with KD and his sixth season in the league, he would average about 34 minutes. In those 34 minutes, he averaged 22.3 points per game. In his first season with KD, Klay Thompson would average his career high. He has not averaged 22.3 points per game since 2017. He did all this while averaging 3.7 rebounds, which is around his career high. He averaged 2.1 assists, which was about average for him. And he stayed at about where he was defensively with 0.8 steals and 0.5 blocks. He would do all this while shooting 46% from the field. He shot 41% from three, making it the sixth year in a row. In his first 6 years, he would shoot at least 40% from three. He also shot 85% from the foul line, making it 5 of his first 6 seasons in the league. He shot at least 80%, at least 84% from the foul line. And, of course, he would go on to make the All-Star team for the third year in a row in 2017. Once the Warriors made the playoffs in their first postseason with Kevin Durant, they would sweep the Trailblazers in the first round. They would sweep the Jazz in the second round. They swept the Spurs in the conference finals. And not to mention that in the first game, Kawhi Leonard did have them up, but Kawhi Leonard got hurt. And then the Warriors gained momentum and won that series. And then, of course, in the finals, the only game that the Warriors would lose that year would be in the NBA Finals to the Cavaliers, as they went on their way to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers they beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 to win their fourth title in to win their third title in San Francisco, to win their 5th title as a franchise. This was the year in which Kevin Durant won his first Finals MVP. And by the end of 2017, by the end of the season, Klay Thompson was a 2-time champion in a 3-year span for this Golden State Warriors team. Following his 6th season in the league, of course, he would return for year number 7. In his age 27 season in 2017-18, Klay Thompson would start all 73 of the games he played for a Golden State Warriors team that finished with a 58-24 record, as they had won 9 less games in the previous season. Of course, with Kevin Durant still on the team, they finished with the second best record, ending their 3-year stretch of finishing with the best record in the West. However, finishing as the runners-up, Klay Thompson would still average about 34 minutes a game. And in his 4th consecutive All-Star season, he would average 20 points per game, making it the 4th consecutive season in which he's done so. Alongside his 20 points, he averaged 3.8 rebounds, which is tied for his career high. He averaged 2.5 assists, which is his 3rd most assists he's ever averaged in a season. He averaged 0.8 steals and 0.5 blocks for about the 3rd season in a row. And amongst his 20 points, he did so while shooting 48% from the field, almost 49% from the field, the highest percentage he's ever shot from the field in a season in his career. He shot 44% from 3, which is also the highest percentage he shot from 3. He would go on to shoot 83% from the foul line on 1.3 free throw attempts per game, which is the lowest amount of free throw attempts he would ever take in a season. As with Kevin Durant being on the team, the offense was more spread out. It was easy for him to make his baskets, but of course there was less volume for him to score, but he was still able to average his 20. In addition to making the All-Star team for his 4th time, the Warriors would go into the playoffs. They would beat the Spurs in 5 in the first round. They would beat the Pelicans in the second round in 5 games. They would beat the Rockets in 7 in the conference finals after they were down 3-2 and Chris Paul then got hurt. They would go on to sweep the Cleveland Cavaliers in the 2018 finals, as Klay Thompson would, of course, go on to average about 16 points and 3 rebounds in this final series as compared to about 16 points the year before. Klay Thompson would go on to win his 3rd title in a 4-year span, and this would be the year in which Kevin Durant will win his 2nd consecutive finals MVP. Following that year, Klay Thompson would return for his 8th and final full season that he's played with the Golden State Warriors, and that, of course, would be his age 28 season in 2018-19. In that season, he would go on to start all 78 of the games he played, in a season where the Golden State Warriors would go on to, of course, finish with the best record in the West. They finished with a 57-25 record after they had won one less game than the year before. This would be the fourth time in a 5-year stretch they finished with the best record in the West. In the fifth year in a row, they finished with a top 2 record in the West. In his last full season, and he would go on to average about 34 minutes per game. He would average 21.5 points, making it the 5th year in a row he averaged at least 20. He did all this while averaging 3.8 rebounds, which is tied for his career high. He averaged 2.4 assists, which is amongst what he was doing. He would average 1.1 steals, which is tied with 2015 for the most steals that he would average in a season. He would also average 0.6 blocks. He would average his 21.5 points per game while shooting 46.7% from the field on 18 shots a game, the most shots he would ever take per game. He would shoot 40% from 3, making it the 8th year in a row he would shoot at least 40% from 3. And he would go on to shoot 81% from the foul line as the Warriors would make their way to the playoffs yet again. 18-19 would be the 9th, or it would be the 5th year in a row in which he was named to the All-Star team. He was named to the All-Defensive Second Team for the very first time in his NBA career. Prior to then, he had not been named to an All-Defensive team. And once the Warriors made the playoffs, they would end up beating the Clippers in the first round in 6. They beat the Rockets in 6 in the second round. They would sweep the Trailblazers in the conference finals. That would be the only game in which they didn't lose. And then they would end up losing in the NBA finals to the Toronto Raptors, led by Kawhi Leonard, as Klay Thompson was one of the players that suffered a knee injury in the finals. That would rule him out for the very next year. Looking very specifically, he would tear his ACL that year, so he would be ruled out for 2019-2020. And right as he was getting ready to come in to prepare for the 2020-21 season, he would tear his ACL while training, so he would miss 2 complete seasons. In the first season that he missed, the Golden State Warriors would finish with the worst record in the Western Conference, and they would end up landing the draft pick that would end up being James Wiseman. In 2020-2021, the Golden State Warriors would finish with the 9th best record in the West, and they would end up losing in their play-in game to the Los Angeles Lakers. And following that match, or I guess following those seasons, they currently lead to where we are now, as Klay Thompson is in the midst of his age 31-32 season, in his 9th season with the Golden State Warriors, as he started 11 games so far for a Warriors team that is holding the 2nd best record in the West. As of right now, they already have 41 wins so far. At one more win in there, they've already clinched yet another winning record, as they sit 2.5 games behind the team that holds the best record in the West, that being the Phoenix Suns. And Klay Thompson just being back is one of the reasons why the Warriors are playing so well, despite Draymond Green having not played in a bit. This season, he's averaging 23.5 minutes per game, which is less than he's averaged his rookie season. Right now, he's averaging about 16.3 points, 3.5 rebounds, 3.1 assists, while averaging half a steal and half a block. He's doing all this while shooting 43% from the field, around the lowest he's shot in his career so far. He's shooting 37.8% from 3, 11 games in, which is below his career mark, where he shot at least 40% from 3 every single year. He's made every single one of his free throws so far, so at least he's doing really well in that department. And at least considering the Warriors are doing well, especially when he plays, it looks as though he's doing his job. He hasn't been playing in the NBA for the last 2 years, so I'm definitely going off the last few seasons that he's played. But considering the last few seasons that he's played, I do not think there's a reason to leave him off. And I cannot wait to see what happens with Klay Thompson between now and next year. I want to thank the ESPN, the Pro and College Basketball Reference websites, and, of course, the Pac-12, the NCAA, and NBA sites for giving me all the facts and figures that I need. I wouldn't be able to do this without them. And hopefully once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I'm going to come back tomorrow on Wednesday, February 9th for another episode. And hopefully by this time next year, I will have Klay Thompson on on this list again, and I will see what he's done between this time and next year. And hopefully I literally can't wait to see what he does, as Klay Thompson is one of the best basketball players to play. If you ever get a chance to watch him, he's wearing number 11 for the Golden State Warriors. And once again, with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another piece. And I do think that Klay Thompson wears number 11 because he was picked 11th in 2011. I have no idea. But thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode after this. Peace out.